Hey, greetings everyone. So here we are speeding through another school year, and in just a few months, hey, we'll be once again taking the state test. Well, the state test isn't an end all in itself, but there's some reasons that the state test really does matter. To me, the state test is a measure of the student's journey of success, and if they do well in the state test, hey, they're getting ready for life. That means they can do math. Yep. They can think science, they can also read, and they can write. And so, are there any things we could do to enable that success, to foster that success, and make our students really become ready for life? That's what this video is about. So on the state test, students that are partially proficient get 0.6 of a point. Those who are proficient get 1 point, and those that are highly proficient get 1.3. And so what enabled my class last year to get 77% proficiency, I credit a lot to advanced writing. I mean, it's something that is so easy and so cool. And so you might ask yourself, well, what is advanced writing? And that's what the first part of this video will be about, and how do we get our students there? That's the second part of this video. And so advanced writing, boy, it's pretty simple. It just means that we're going to start out the meat of our essay, the evidence. We're going to start out with some appetizers. Yeah, appetizers like main idea, question hooks, and background hooks that both grab the reader's attention. Writing is really interesting and intriguing when students use hooks. So hooks, yep, they're the appetizer of the essay, and they intrigue the reader. That is their goal. And so hooks can be in two categories, although we could come up with more than that, but one would be main idea question hooks. Main idea question hooks, they're main ideas, but they're just in the form of a question that make the reader think, that make the reader want to actually read what's been written. And then background hooks just give the reader a little sense of the setting, a little sense of the picture of what they'll be reading about. And so they're an easy thing to add at the beginning of the essay, which of course includes all of the evidence. And so main idea question hooks we will look at first. What just are they? Well, as I said before, to do a main idea question hook, you really have to think about the main idea. What was this article about? What was the main idea of it? Or if it were a narrative, what was the theme of it? And so you want that main idea question hook to hammer. Yep, the main idea or the theme. And that's what's going to make it totally powerful. So here's some examples. We were reading about a boy who went to summer camp and he got bullied, but then he actually was kind to his bully, which turned everything around. So look at her good question hooks. Have you ever gotten a nickname you didn't like? Yeah, the poor boy in the story had a terrible nickname that he inherited right away. So that one completely hammers the main idea. Or have you ever gotten along with your bully? Man, that's the theme of this whole story, was the kindness he gave to his bully, which actually turned out to be good in the end. Or have you ever been to summer camp, and have you ever been teased before? All of those were just perfect main idea hook questions. Here's another one on the same story. Have you ever bullied someone or called them a name? Have you ever been scared by an animal? Yeah, because the boy in the story got scared by a toad that dropped down on him, which is what gave him his nickname. Have you ever changed from someone's actions? Have you ever gotten a horrid nickname that someone dislikes? Has someone ever defended you? Wow, perfect hook question, because that's what happened to him at the end of the story. So beautiful hook questions. Here's another one. We were reading about the day to celebrate families, and it was about the Day of the Dead. Have you ever used items or food to celebrate your dear loved ones, your dead loved ones? Yeah, the whole story was about that. It was about setting up this table to celebrate the people who had died. Have you ever surrounded a picture of your dead loved one with things that they had or loved? And that too was exactly what the story was about. Have you ever eaten a type of bread called soul bread? Yeah, that bread was a huge part of their celebration. And then her last question just hit it totally on totally nailed it. And it is, do you know what an ofrenda is? And so this whole article was about setting up the ofrenda table. We were reading about plants and how they protect themselves. Here's one. Do you know how plants protect themselves? Do you know how plants trick insects? Do you know the kinds of poisons plants have? Do you know that some plants pretend to be other things? So this person hit every aspect of the whole article with a main idea question hook, making the reader want to read it. So beautiful main idea hook question paragraph. But then there's background hooks. I started using those about a year ago, and so I brought my score up 10 points higher to have both the main idea hook question hook and also the background hook. And so background hooks, they just simply give the reader a picture of what they will be reading. It kind of sets the stage. It puts the reader's mind in the setting of that story. So in this one, you see, of course, the question hook paragraph, but then in yellow, it's giving us a picture. It was a painful day for plants. Insects crawled on the plants. Plants cried for help. Leftover leaves got stomped on the ground. Insects were munching on plants. A perfect hook paragraph because it's giving a picture of the war that goes on between plants and all of its predators. So beautiful paragraph that just sets the stage for reading the whole essay. Here's one we were reading about a girl who wanted to see her friend in Minnesota, and she had moved to Ohio, and they were going to go back for Thanksgiving, but the weather got bad. And so in yellow, here's his background hook. It was a snowy day. The roads of Ohio were a haze of snow. The tiny, glimmering snowflakes drifted to the ground like feathers of the angels above. The ground felt like a giant snap-time blanket that smushed by the feet of those who stepped on it. The birds flew like paper airplanes from school. And so his just totally gives us a picture of that setting. And so when we're doing background hook paragraphs, we really celebrate like similes, and we celebrate classy, vibrant words that absolutely give us a picture. Yahoo. Here's one where it was back to the camp one. Yep. And one sunny day, the sun was shining like 1,000 bright lights. The white and fluffy looking clouds helped a little bit. Huge trees were surrounding you, and some were lying on the ground. The tree leaves were rustling against the other trees, and the blackbirds were squawking as loud as they could. And now he's heading into the camp setting. The counselor was announcing a hard challenge. And so that background hook paragraph, boy, it ties right in with the writing. And then, of course, comes the evidence. This is the heart of the essay. And so definitely we want to elaborate. We want to have good transitions. We want to have separated paragraphs. So here's an essay with his hook question paragraph and his background hook paragraphs. And then here comes the part of his essay. And look, he has a hook question on that as well. Have you ever seen a plant with sharp armor? And so this whole thing was there were 4 kinds of plant types of sharp armor that a plant can use. They have different names based on where they live and where they grow in the plant. There's a thorn and it's a branch. The locust tree has one of the best thorns. Their thorns can be up to 3 inches. So see, all those sentences were just about a thorn. And that's what we want to do. We want the writer to elaborate and explain. Then he goes on to the roses. Sticky. Do you know roses have thorn-like armor? Have you ever gotten hurt by a rose? How do you feel about roses having thorn-like armor? Roses don't have thorns, but their thorns are called prickles. Prickles aren't thorns, and not from branches. They are a rose's skin. And see, once again, the part about the rose's thorn prickle was elaborated, and that's what we want. And so that's what he did the whole way through. And then he goes on to the next paragraph of his essay, because there were like 4 types of protections plants use. This one was about plants making poisons or things that taste bad. And so look at that elaboration supreme. That's what we want to happen. This one was on how plants get help from others. And so you can see he has good hook questions, and he's got a flood of evidence, and that's what we want on evidence. Plants can also trick their predators, and so this one was about plants fooling them. So the second part of this video is, how do we get our students there? The first part just featured, what do we want in an essay? Yeah, what is advanced writing? And now it's, how do we get them there? And so we always do our writing off of Common Lit. So we go to commonlit.org. I'll show you in just a second. And then we create an assignment. And then we find the essay question, which is in the assessment part. And it's the last question featured, usually question 4 or 5. And so usually our essay comes from that question. And then we put it on that question on a Google Doc, in which I save in a Common Lit section on my drive. And then I create that assignment on Google Classroom, attaching that doc. And I like to have a rubric added, and I like to grade my students on how are their hooks, how is their evidence, and how is their mechanics. And so that makes grading so easy using Google Classroom and Google Doc by assignment that's added, So once all that's done, then in the classroom, I'm real big on having my students read each section out loud. A section is what will get you to like question 1, and then there's a question. I want them to read it out loud 3 times. Why? I want them to read it out loud because it improves their fluency. And kids today aren't like willing readers. They just aren't. And so by reading it out loud, it also fosters their understanding. And while they're reading it out loud, knowing the question for the essay, they make a webbing map. And so the webbing map is almost like the skeleton of their essay. So it groups things by ideas, and it shows the elaboration of one idea. Here's a good example of a webbing map that students can make. So here's the section on ouch up in the upper right-hand corner. And notice there are 4 kinds of thorns and stickers that plants can have. And notice on each one he has ideas coming out of it. That helps him elaborate when he starts to write his paragraph. And then the next one and the next one and the next one, all are going to go in the same paragraph. That means you're not going to take something from this section and put it up there. So it keeps the writing organized, and it helps the person elaborate. Here was the section on yuck. So all of his ideas that he elaborated so well on are there. Here's the one on help, how plants call for help from other insects. And here's the one on plants fooling. Now, the power of making a webbing map is that one then understands the reading, so good writing forces one to have good reading as well, because otherwise you can't write. So even though students are learning to do well on writing, they're also getting better at reading. So it's like a double whammy of success. And then we take those ideas from their webbing map and we make a class one. So I want everyone to make the webbing map on their own first. I don't want to spoon feed them because then they're not going to think. But after they've all made their webbing map, we make a class one. So students might want to add some ideas to their webbing map or revise it just a little bit. And then, of course, we're at the point where they have to answer the question. So in Common Lit, it's so beautiful that they can highlight the proof before they answer the question, because I want that just deeply ingrained in them, that you don't ever answer anything unless you have solid proof in your mind. And then we continue that process for each section. The next section they will read out loud 3 times. They'll keep making their webbing map, and then we'll talk about it and add and make a class one together. And that's all on for day 1. So on day 2, after the reading has all been done on day 1, then we begin our essay. So for starters, we'll just talk about what was the theme or the main idea of that article. And then once we've done that little discussion, everyone writes their main idea, hook, question, paragraph. So maybe take 5-10 minutes. And so they're all writing that same paragraph at the same time, which enables us to model and celebrate and learn from each other. And then on the big screen, as soon as they're done writing, I say, hey, who wants to share theirs? And they love to have theirs shared. And then we talk about, how did that hammer the main idea? Did that one, is there a sentence that was better of all of their hook questions? Or is there one we could get rid of because it really didn't hammer the main idea? And so once again, we're just showing the thinking of how to build a question hook paragraph. And so then after that, hey, we'll talk a little bit about the setting of that story, and then they each write their background hook paragraph. And once again, as soon as maybe in 10 minutes, they share theirs and we celebrate, and we're looking for vibrant words, we're looking for similes, we're looking for a picture that really nails what the story was about. And so it's something that they just grow in throughout the year. And then they begin writing the evidence paragraphs, and we share them periodically. Maybe in 15 minutes, we'll share theirs. We want them to use all the information from their webbing map. Yep, we do. We want each separate paragraph to start with a hook question and to just elaborate the evidence and explain. So then comes the painful part of the essay, the revise and edit. You all know how painful that can be. Well, when students get done with their essay, or they think they're done with their essay, I have them find a partner who's also done, and they read each other's essay out loud, listening for where they need to stop, listening for where periods should be, listening for sense, seeing if they need to elaborate more and explain more. And so that's one thing we do. Another thing I've started, which is going so well, in Google Classroom, I have a section called Daily Grammar, where I take someone's writing from a previous essay, and everybody revises that same piece of someone's writing. And so they do it as bell work when they come in the morning, and they read it out loud. The best thing to do when you're editing is to read it out loud. Listen for sense. Listen for where you need to stop. Listen for all those good things, and then fix it up. And so everyone gets that very same one, and their job then is to read it out loud by themselves and fix it up. Find those periods and those capitals. Someone who actually did revise it, and they noticed the periods are there, the capitals are there. Sometimes we learn, instead of short, choppy sentences, hey, you can connect it with the word and or but, depending on what makes sense. But yeah, this has helped so many students now start to use the proper sentence structure and along with punctuation, because it doesn't matter how good the writing is if it isn't fixed up in terms of revising and editing, it's not going to be half as good. So we're learning to fix up their good writing. Student way back in August, this was her writing then. And here's that same student in November. We were reading about what turkeys eat for Thanksgiving and how they've been able to survive over the thousands of years. Here's her question hook paragraph and her background hook paragraph, and then all of the paragraphs of her essay. Notice she has question hooks on each one of them, lots of elaboration. And here's her 7-paragraph essay. The number of paragraphs we do is kind of determined by how many ideas there were in the paragraph that we want to write about. And so she ends with her conclusion as well. Here's another one on August 3rd. This was his whole essay. And here's that same student just a week ago, and we were writing about the wild turkeys. Notice his question hook paragraph, his background hook paragraph, and his evidence in the form of paragraphs. Now each student goes at their own pace. They all start out at a different spot, but they grow as far as they're able to go. And so everybody, even with the same lessons that I'm teaching, grows as far as they can go. And that's the cool thing about it all. Yahoo to all students and writing growth.